In the incredible novel Thrawn by Timothy Zahn, we not only saw Thrawn work his way up the Imperial ranks to become Grand Admiral of the Imperial Navy, but we learned that he had an extensive history with both Palpatine and Darth Vader. Thrawn's history with Vader is more important and complex than simply meeting the Sith Lord within the Emperor's throne room on Coruscant, as Thrawn also met Vader prior to his fall to the dark side, when he met the Jedi General Anakin Skywalker years earlier while exploring the edges of the known galaxy during the Clone Wars. Given that the Grand Admiral has had the opportunity to meet both Anakin and Vader, and his extensive meetings with the Emperor in assisting the Empire chart a path through the unknown regions, it must be asked, will Thrawn discover Palpatine and Vader's true identity as Sith Lords? In this video expose, I will explain why it's likely that Thrawn will come to realize the truth about who is really leading the Empire, and the important consequences that would result once Thrawn understands Palpatine and Vader are Sith. First, it's important to start with the fact that it's very likely that Thrawn will be able to discover that Vader's true identity is that of Anakin Skywalker. As seen within this year's Thrawn novel by Zahn, Thrawn had the opportunity to meet Anakin while the Jedi was fighting against the Separatists in the Clone War, and while Thrawn was undertaking a mission on behalf of the Chiss Ascendancy to examine the political and military systems of the Galactic Republic. Unfortunately, we weren't provided with very many details of Thrawn's interactions with Anakin. What we do know are the details of Thrawn's opinions of Anakin that were relayed to Palpatine when Thrawn first met the Emperor on Coruscant. From this first meeting between Thrawn and Palpatine, we know that Thrawn had a very high opinion of Anakin, referring to him as a cunning and courageous warrior who he'd hoped to meet again one day. Even more important to the question of Thrawn discovering that Anakin is Vader, and ultimately that both he and the Emperor are Sith, is that Thrawn viewed Anakin, even before his fall to the dark side, as a servant of Palpatine. This was due to the way that Thrawn perceived Anakin's speech, whereby Anakin always spoke very highly of Palpatine. To Thrawn, as someone who's constantly paying attention to the true motivations behind everything that is said, as well as the physical changes in individuals during their interactions with him, Anakin's way of speaking about the then-Chancellor Palpatine signified that he was a servant of him, and that the Jedi was beneath Palpatine in the hierarchy that existed between them. Therefore, we know that at the very least, Thrawn views Anakin as a cunning and courageous warrior, and as a natural servant to Palpatine. I believe that Zahn's words were chosen carefully, and provide an enormous clue during Thrawn's first face-to-face meeting with Vader in the Emperor's throne room. When Vader enters the throne room where Palpatine and Thrawn are, Palpatine calls out for Vader to join them. Importantly, Zahn writes the scene wherein Thrawn interprets Palpatine's call as beckoning Vader, practically summoning him to join the two of them. Not only does Palpatine beckoning Vader signify the existence of a master-servant relationship between the Emperor and Vader, but Thrawn recognizes within Palpatine's body language and facial expressions that it's Palpatine who is in the position of, quote, mastery and domination over Vader. Further, Thrawn recognizes that Vader is an individual who wields great power and confidence. Therefore, we can see from even this brief encounter between Thrawn and Vader within the novel that there are attributes that are present within Vader that are easily connected back to Anakin Skywalker. That is, that both Anakin and Vader are confident and courageous warriors, and both are in a subservient position in relation to Palpatine, wherein both served the then Chancellor and the now Emperor. These attributes could certainly form the catalyst for Thrawn, ultimately making the connection that the true identity of Vader is that of Anakin Skywalker. But I would argue that while these attributes provided in the Thrawn novel are certainly important, the fact that Thrawn has experience with both Anakin and Vader is enough for the Grand Admiral to ultimately determine that Vader had once been Anakin. In the novel Tarkin by James Luceno, we learn that all it took for Tarkin to conclude that Vader's true identity was likely to be that of Anakin was the fact that he could relay his experiences and what he knew about the Jedi Knight and compare those attributes and abilities to Vader. Importantly, just like Thrawn immediately recognizes that Vader is subservient to Palpatine, it was Vader's obedience and steadfast devotion to the Emperor that allowed Tarkin to conclude that Vader was Anakin. This is because it allowed Tarkin, just as could be done by Thrawn, to see Vader as more man than machine, and gave Tarkin the basis to assume that Vader had an identity before becoming encased within his suit in cybernetics. From there, all Tarkin had to do was compare the attributes that he saw within Anakin and connect them to those he also clearly saw within Vader, namely, the rapport they shared with the clone troopers and stormtroopers who they commanded, and the technique that they both displayed when wielding their lightsaber. These same connections are available to be made by Thrawn, who would similarly recognize the abilities of commanding troops and skills as a warrior that would be shared by both Anakin and Vader. As intelligent as Tarkin is, in my opinion, even the Grand Moff doesn't share the deductive reasoning and logic capabilities of the Grand Admiral, and I believe that Thrawn will make many of the same connections that Tarkin did, thereby allowing him to conclude that Vader is in fact Anakin Skywalker. Thrawn's understanding that Anakin and Vader are the same person is crucial to his understanding that both Vader and Palpatine are Sith Lords. Thrawn would know that the Jedi were purged from the galaxy, with their order banned and made illegal, and therefore, Thrawn would have to conclude that Anakin had become something else, thus plunging the Chiss into a greater understanding of the Jedi and the Sith. Although much of that information would be unavailable to Thrawn, given that it was banned with the rise of the Galactic Empire, it wouldn't be impossible for Thrawn to develop ways to greater learn the truth of these topics, particularly as someone who was able to learn the name and much of the capabilities of the secretive Death Star plans, shocking even Palpatine with his knowledge. Once Thrawn is able to make these connections between Anakin the Jedi and Vader the Sith, it would be open for Thrawn to conclude that Palpatine is a Sith himself, and Vader's master. As the Tarkin novel demonstrates, Palpatine knew that once Tarkin connected Vader with Anakin Skywalker, it was only a matter of time that Tarkin would also assume that he was a Sith Lord. This is because Tarkin would have concluded that Vader had become a Sith, and that Sidious was Vader's dark side master, given the former Jedi's obedience and devotion to him. I believe that this is the same course of logic and reasoning that will be followed by Thrawn, and the clues for this are already present during Thrawn's first interaction with both Palpatine and Vader. As previously stated, Thrawn recognized that it was Vader who was the servant to Palpatine, not vice versa, and it was Palpatine who held mastery and domination over Vader. Further, Zahn even makes it obvious to the reader that Thrawn recognizes the yellow tinge appearing stronger in Palpatine's eyes when he becomes increasingly angry and full of malice, demonstrating that Thrawn is perceptive of things that are occurring within the realm of attributes surrounding the Sith. Therefore, although an argument can be made that Thrawn already knows that Vader is Anakin by the time of their first meeting at the end of the Thrawn novel, I believe that Thrawn will ultimately conclude that Vader and Anakin are the same person. Armed with this knowledge, Thrawn will follow the logic that Vader was a Sith, and then conclude that Palpatine is his Sith master. Thrawn's understanding that Palpatine and Vader are Sith Lords will have a significant influence on his future within the Imperial Navy. In fact, I believe that in learning their true identity as Sith, we will see this provide Thrawn with reason to leave the Empire prior to the Battle of Yavin to rejoin the Chiss Ascendancy within the Unknown Regions, thereby giving Thrawn a fitting end for his arc in Season 4 of Rebels, and explaining why he isn't present within the Imperial Navy by the time of the original trilogy. Thrawn leaving the Empire upon his learning that Palpatine and Vader are Sith would be tied to his fear of the Empire's Death Star. Throughout the Thrawn novel, it's clear that the Chiss is becoming increasingly concerned about the Death Star project, and the threat that it might come to represent against his own people. It must be remembered that Thrawn chose to ally with the Empire, given his concerns over the evil that existed within the Unknown Regions, and the threat this evil represented to the Chiss and the entire galaxy. Thrawn ultimately hoped that in defending the Empire against the rebels, the Empire would be a strong ally to help the Chiss destroy this threat in the Unknown Regions, viewing the Empire as the lesser of the two evils. However, as Thrawn would admit to his nemesis and early rebel Nightswan, who was also growing increasingly concerned with the secretive project being pursued by the Empire. If the Death Star turned out to be a threat against the Chiss ascendancy, then he would consider leaving the Empire entirely, viewing the Empire as a threat that was equal, or even greater, than the evil that was within the unknown regions. I believe that Thrawn will continue to discover more about the true size and power of the Death Star following his promotion to the rank of Grand Admiral. But more importantly, I believe that Thrawn will discover what he truly wants to know about the Death Star through his discovery that Palpatine and Vader are Sith Lords. That is, the superweapon's true purpose. In discovering that two Sith are in control of the Death Star, Thrawn will recognize that they mean to use it as a threat to any system that doesn't submit to the rule of Palpatine, including the Chiss ascendancy. Thrawn is already right to be suspicious, withholding the location of Chiss bases from the Empire when helping to chart a path through the unknown regions. But discovering that Palpatine and Vader are Sith, and that they're in control of a weapon with the ability to annihilate entire planets, would be too much for Thrawn, and prompt him to end his assistance to the Empire and rejoin the Chiss ascendancy, leaving the rebellion to weaken them as a threat to the Chiss. Therefore, Thrawn will discover Vader's true identity as Anakin Skywalker, and in doing so, discover that both he and Palpatine are Sith Lords. So there we have it, why Thrawn will discover Palpatine and Vader's true identity as Sith Lords. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me, for being a courageous warrior.